So today we were supposed to have an actual another AutoCrafting challenge. If you're new to the channel and don't know what that was, I did used to host a challenge where I would challenge a bunch of people in my Discord to create a certain AutoCrafter, whether that be for a certain recipe by itself, the fastest possible for that recipe, or we did most recently ones, which the ones I think are the best, is the one wide tile level challenge for an autocrafter. Now those can be difficult, so there was actually only one person that actually submitted a final design to me. We only got one design, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to focus on this one design entirely. We're going to break it down, everything from the person's thought process from the beginning to the final design, and then showing off the final crafter in the end. So first, what are the challenges making a one wide tile level crafter? Well, firstly, look at a regular Minecraft block, there is 6 sides to the block. Now for a one wide tileable autocrafter, you only have 3 options to work with. Usually there is another case, but we're not going to get to that right now because it is a bit more highly advanced in terms of autocrafting. So ideally you only use 3 sides of the crafting table because that's really all you can do. Yes, you can put one underneath here, but then you have to actually get items out of the crafting table. You need to use a hopper minecart, which can be laggy at times. So the person that actually submitted the crafter design was CommandLeo. Now, most of you probably know CommandLeo for the storage tech that he does, but Leo is also, as surprised me, also really good at autocrafting and makes better designs than me. That's for sure. So if you haven't seen CommandLeo, definitely link in the description down below to their channel. They don't really post too much, but if you want to go show them some support, this is where all the stuff in this video is coming from because it all was designed by CommandLeo. So like I said, there's only 3 sides that can be available. You can use a 4th, but it can be a bit annoying to get the items out of the crafting table that way. And also the other challenge that I did for this one is that there was no hopper minecarts allowed. So therefore you only had to use 3 droppers. Now for this autocrafting mod, there is support for hoppers as well as droppers. The main reason why people don't really use hoppers too much is because of the fact that you can pulse a dropper 2 times as fast as a hopper can transport items, because you can pulse a dropper at 4 game ticks compared to the hopper's 8 game ticks, allowing you to make a faster auto-crafting sequence most of the time. So the item we were actually crafting for this challenge was the composter. Now the composter is a very interesting, simple yet complicated recipe to design. So if you go back to the crafting table here and we type in the composter, you will see that it is kind of like a U shape. So we need to do the same sequence twice and then just 3 slabs. So then you're probably asking, how do we get the center items here in and out of the crafting table? Well, in is pretty simple. So you just dispense the item into the crafting table. It can be any item that is non-stackable. Non-stackable items are just really difficult to deal with in terms of filters. So ideally, you want to use something that's not included in the recipe. This could be any block that you could do. Most autocrafters I usually use concrete or concrete powders because that's the build-in block I have, so that if I have it on myself when building the crafter in survival, I can just throw those items into here and then I know how to do the filter. So first thing you need to do when designing an autocrafter with dummy items is you need to decide which dropper you want to have the dummy items in. So for a one wide tileable design here, there's only 2 of 3 droppers that you would normally choose, these being the bottom left or the bottom right. So if we choose the bottom left one here, for example, and then we want to have this other hopper that's coming out of the crafting table into that, we need to make sure we don't unlock this hopper until we want to transfer the dummy items over to the side here. But if we use this right here, this will basically create us a loop. Therefore, we don't need to input any dummy items into the crafter. It automatically recycles them and keeps it filled no matter what. Now, of course, you need to do a filter for this, which we will show in a little bit. Now, however, you also want to then take care of the item that comes out underneath, which is what you want to go out of the crafting table is the crafted recipe, in this case being the composter. So now that we have our dummy item droppers selected, these 2 will be for the slabs because there is only one item type to craft the composter, which is slabs. So this makes it really easy to wire in a sense because these are the same item. You can pulse them at the same time because it doesn't matter what they get inputted. As long as we power this one before this one, then the dummy items go in before the slabs. Now in certain directions, you ideally don't want to make a crafter directional. However, with some certain speeds and layouts, there are use cases for directional autocrafters. That's just mainly down to how you power the droppers. If you power them all in the same game tick, basically it'll make use of the update order, which will update a certain direction first before the others. So if you were to make this crafter directional, you would need to make sure that this dropper here activates in the middle of these two, which can be a bit difficult to do sometimes. So now the next process would be to figure out how we actually need to make the sequence for the composter. So the first ones are pretty simple here, because this will be our dummy items, and then these two will be the slabs. So the really only way we need to do it is we need to power. I will not be given exactly how Leo designed it. I'll also be walking you through my thought process as well if I were to design this myself. So what we need to do is power this top. I will power this top one first, then I would power this one here, and then that one. That just makes the wiring a little bit easier in my head, because we then power this top one. We can then take a signal from this, and then power this one 4 game ticks later, if we were to then power this one as well. You could make it directional where you power both of these at the same time. However, then getting items into these droppers could be difficult, because also a requirement for this challenge is that everything needs to have access in some way from the top of the crafter to be input into here. Now, for example, we don't need to put anything inside of this dropper here, because we talked before, this one will have an automatic refill and cycle, so we don't have to worry about inputting any dummy items into the crafter, making sure that we only need to do is put in slabs into the crafter. So for the sequence itself, we need to do a slab, a dummy item, slab, which I talked about doing that. We need to do the same thing twice, which is a slab, a dummy item, and a slab. Then the very last one is only 3 slabs. Now, something special with AutoCrafting table is that if this inventory is filled here, for example, and we go to power any of these other droppers, you will see that nothing gets inputted into the table because it is filled. But also, very importantly, is the droppers do not dispense or lose any of their items, which we can take advantage of because we only need 3 slabs for the end in sequence here. What we can do is we can power both of these twice, and then even if the crafting table gets filled, we won't lose out on an extra slab because we powered it at the same time with 2 of these. Makes the wiring a little bit easier, and then therefore you don't lose any items, making it really, really reliable and efficient. All right, so now I got Leo's sequence here. I did take off some of the stuff, but this is essentially the sequence that Leo did create for this composter recipe here. So the main issue that Leo did run across was that we needed to do the same thing twice for the first 2 rows here, then not input any dummy items into the table for the 3rd row. Because like I said before, the last row is only 3 slabs, unlike the 2 slabs and dummy item for the top 2 rows. So what Leo does here is he takes away this block here with this sticky piston being retracted to get rid of the block that would power the dropper dispensing the dummy items into the crafter there. What Leo originally wanted to do to make that not be the case is power this dropper here with a 4-tick repeater. However, this could cause a lot of issues, and Leo ultimately decided not to do this. The main reason Leo wanted to originally do a 4-tick repeater is if we have this dropper powered, for instance, by this 4-tick repeater, and we try to power it again, it won't update and then shoot out the items. No items would get out of that dropper there, which you would want ideally, but then that would cause this system here would cause a little bit more issues than it would solve. So Leo ultimately decided to not use the 4-tick repeater and just decided to retract the block entirely. Something Leo also likes to do with any of the autocrafters, especially in their storage tech designs, is not include any toggle states. So as you can see here, everything is not toggled. But by toggle states, what we mean is that, for example, if you have a observer going into a sticky piston and you quick pulse it with an observer, the sticky piston loses its blocks, which you don't want to do, because if you unload this could basically not be ideal, and then you would have to come in and fix the crafter yourself. Whereas if you simply just use a 4-tick repeater or a 2-tick repeater is all you really need to do this, you will have the block be retracted no matter what if you were to unload this, making it a little bit more reliable in a sense that if you accidentally unload the crafters, they are not catastrophically broken because of the use of a toggle state. So now we get into the interesting part of this crafter is doing the unlocking of the bottom hoppers here. So usually there are two ways you usually get around the locking here. So what you usually do is you just basically have, so you could have a power source power in the top of here, whether that be a redstone block, a composter, or a comparator reading off a composter, or things like that. That way you can keep it locked for a certain period of time and then unlock it when you need to do that. We can move it out of the way very easily. You could also use redstone torches or by also using the filter. The filters either can have a regular, regular item sorter filter with the comparator and dust into the bottom with the torch. However, these aren't usually preferred because of the delay it takes to unlock them and then relock them based off the fill level in the hopper or in the craft table to decide when it is filled or stuff like that. This is usually a very older, simpler design, but nowadays you just go based off the time-ins and try to get it as fast as possible with the design. What Leo decided to do here is use a pre-filled filter. What that means is everything is filled in. So unfortunately, there is a little over 10 stacks of the crafted material, which is the composter in this case, already pre-filled in the dropper, the hopper, and the hopper underneath the actual table itself. This not only makes the unlocking of the hoppers fairly simple, it also makes the dispensing of the items included as well. Unfortunately, it does come with a massive buffer, being the use of a dropper being completely filled, one slot in the next hopper above, and then as well as all of your dummy items that need to be filled into the crafter itself. This could all be the same item. So these could all be structure voids, however they need to be filled stacks. If you were, for example, to use it this way, you can have different dummy item. That way you can also have less of that one. In any case you wanted to do that, if you needed to be less on items, this really all does is just make the filter for this be a little bit less. But then having 4 stacks, you can have 1 stack and a 25 instead. Then you need to also pre-fill this dropper here with a full stack of dummy items. That way nothing else can be transferred into here until the items go up in the system itself. And then we only make use of the dust being updated here to then dispense the item here as well. The main reason Leo used this pre-filled filter layout is because it's a little bit smaller than using a regular filter. You could also use it as a regular filter if you wanted to and not have to use all of these dummy items here. If you really don't want to do that, you could use a regular filter and do the same thing. It would just add an extra block onto it, which Leo wanted to shave off, which is why that is like that. So now that we have all of this stuff on this right side here, we needed to do the clock, which Leo just did an observer chain, which was 32 game ticks in delay with the use of these repeaters up here as well. That just gives you enough delay to, once that signal gets back up top, then the crafting sequence can start back over again. Then you can basically loop that every 32 game ticks or roughly under 2 seconds, which this crafter does while being one wide tileable, which is just absolutely insane. A stipulation for this challenge was to have an internal clock in the crafter and not make use of any external clocks. What I mean by that is that if for the crafter itself, there needs to be a clock for individual crafters, not in this case where there would be a clock running down all of the crafters, and then every 32 game ticks would go across to each crafter and then power the sequence like that. This one includes the clock inside of the crafter, which is this part down here. 32 game ticks of delay right there. Yes, it does make the crafter a little bit bigger. I think it is a little bit useful for anybody that were to not understand the crafter itself. They could use one or multiple of these and then just chain them together. Not have to worry about how to hook up an external clock to it. It's already included inside the crafter itself. Also can be a bit slower in some circumstances using an internal clock compared to an external clock. However, that was something I wanted to do for the challenge, was include the clock inside the crafter sequence itself. So now that we have all the pieces of the AutoCrafters and the thought process behind actually designing one, so if you want to design one yourself, you could also take some tips and tricks from Leo and improve on them if you wanted to do that. Or even if you wanted to make your own custom recipe. For example, there's comparators, there's, any redstone material. is usually something that you would actually want to autocraft because it's more used in the sense for the technical Minecraft community. So that's what we usually do for these challenges, is anything redstone related. Obviously, composter is not too much besides getting a signal strength from the fill level of the composter, or for just covering up on top of hoppers. But normally you would want to lock them instead of just putting the composter on top for better lag efficiency. So this is the full crafter here. Like I said, 32 game tick cycle, which results in 2,250 composters per hour being 1 wide tileable. And it is only 1 block wide, of course, 7 blocks tall, and 10 blocks in length, with the attached clock, of course. So this input here is for, this white wool represents the input here. What also I didn't explain before as well is that we QC this dropper here, making use of the power in this block behind it. Slabs of the hopper here will not update this dropper, so this rail line on top here would be something that would update this dropper based off the update for this. So if you see, if we power this observer here, trying our best to use a redstone block, but if we use the composer here, you can see that this dropper gets updated. If we were to, for example, not have this rail on top of this observer here, the dropper underneath would not update. But this rail also sends a block update to this block what the observer is on, which then will then update the dropper down below. Very nice feature, because otherwise updating this dropper would not be possible with this current layout. You would have to then somehow power it like this instead, which could be doable. It's just honestly not the way to go, because this is much more simpler and more compact. So some extra features about this crafter we also did do is, obviously we did show off that the dropper shoots out the crafted item, and you can use hook that up to a water stream. If you were to tile this, for example, which is the main purpose of a 1 wide tileable crafter, is to, of course, tile it. Then have a bunch of these for if you need to do like a composter mass crafting station. You can do this as well if you don't want to use mass crafting, of course. There is also an included on-off switch represented by this green wool down here. So if you were to turn the crafter off, it would also not break the system here, which is also a requirement for the crafter. The reason why I include this is because, for example, if you were to turn the crafter off at the wrong time, you would either double pulse the clock at the same time, which should cause some issues with the autocrafter, which you obviously don't want to do, because then you would need to go to each autocrafter individually and then fix it yourself by either emptying out the table here or by refilling the dummy items inside the hopper here down below. It is also non-directional, so you can rotate this in any 4 directions that you want to do. And there is also no toggle states. Like I said, was that also one of Leo's goals, is to make it toggle stateless, mainly for reliability. And then really the only downside with this design here is the fact of the pre-filling of the 9 stacks of composters in there, 1 stack in there, and then all the dummy items. And then since Leo's such a nice guy, he also included one with less observers, because personally this doesn't look as good, as clean to me as this does. It's just my personal opinion. However, yours could be different. If you wanted to use more observers, you can use this clock here, or you can use this one here. However, this does use a 36 game tick cycle instead of a 32 game tick cycle with all these observers here. So that does lower the rate of the crafter by 250 items per hour. So you're still getting 2,000 items per hour with the composter here, compared to the 2250 for this one. However, it's your personal opinion if you want to go for looks or if you want to go for speed. These are your 2 options here. But all in all, Leo was like I said, the only one to do it. So we kind of turned into a challenge and CommandLeo challenge instead of the actual AutoCrafting challenge. But like I said, Leo was the fastest one to actually submit the design as well. So Leo had this submitted to me within 2 days. I gave him a week to do it. Leo had it done in 2 days. Probably had it done in less time, to be honest, because Leo just does it that quickly sometimes. But yeah, so that is the crafter here. We'll show them actually working here. We'll show both designs going off here, and actually show the input sequence. Just how fast the input sequence is here, you can see, is quite insane. Then we go over to the 36 game tick cycle here. You can see it's a little bit slower for the input, but it's all in all basically the same design for this as well. And of course, both on-off switches don't break anything if you were to turn them off at any given point in time. And then of course, these items up here, your input, you would then, if you were to use this one here, this would have to be a barrel. It has to be a solid block. You could also use a dropper if you wanted to, but then I'm basically worried about cross powering with this. But as long as this hopper is filled and the next one over there, then you won't have any issues with that. But this needs to either be a barrel or a dropper. It cannot be a hopper or anything of that nature if you were to add items into here. Because the rail is on top, unfortunately this block has to go out there. And obviously this one's really easy. These can go both straight up into a shulker box unloader if you wanted to do that. You could also hook it up to a single shulker box unloader and then do a 2x unloader with a simple minecart with 2 hoppers if you wanted to do that. Make only use of 1 shulker box unloader per crafter, making it very compact in that sense. Same thing for this one, same input, everything's all the same. Only thing that's different is, as you can see, is the clock on the sides, on the left side here. But all in all, crafters are very, very compact, much better than I could have done. People will call me the autocrafting god when it really is CommandLeo. Leo is just amazing with anything to do with storage tech, and of course, apparently even now autocrafting. So I wouldn't be surprised if Leo were to have some more appearances on this channel, whether we make this a series where we actually just basically, instead of making the autocrafting challenge itself, we just challenge Leo to a certain design that is picked up by the community, and then some certain stipulations like, you know, no hopper minecarts, 1 wide tileable, fast as possible. I know Leo does prefer the 1 wide tileability challenge because it is a bit more to it than just trying to get the crafting table filled and emptied as fast as possible. For the 1 wide tile, you also need to take into consideration the tileability factor of the crafter, which can take some time to do because you won't be able to power the fastest possible one the same way as you power the 1 wide tileable one, just due to some restraints with how you do it, because in this case, we can't power these 3 observers. If we were to do it like this, so power all 3 of them, we would have to then space it up by a block like this. That way we can power them all individually without them interfering with the one next to them as well. And then of course, when you're doing the 1 wide tileable, you also want to make it as fast as you possibly can. So that basically combines the fastest and the most compact into one, which all in all makes for a better crafter in most people's opinion because of the compactness as well as the speed. All in all, as it wasn't planned to only be a Leo only challenge, I did like that I get to break down a full crafter for you, as well as also walk you through the thought process of from the start to finish of what the design process was for this crafter. Also, the issues that Leo did come across, the challenges they had to overcome, and then what they did to either overcome those or to make a better alternative with this as well, and also show 2 different designs with a less observer spam, makes it a little bit cheaper as well to build on survival compared to all those observers over there. You could then use this one, like I said, it's a bit slower for 36 game ticks compared to the 32. So you lose out on a little bit of crafted composters. However, it is a bit cheaper to build, which can be a huge saver for any survival builds. So yeah, if you want to see this in the future, we'll give Leo another challenge. Definitely leave your suggestions down below what material Leo should craft next, and what stipulations you want to have the challenge be, whether that be no hopper minecarts, no toggle states, or anything else you can think of for a challenge to add on top of the actual crafter itself. So yeah, make sure you like, subscribe, all sorts of things, and I'll see you in the next one.